Okay, guys, good afternoon. Today we're going to be going over the powers of government in class. So to start us off, I'm going to show you guys two videos that give us a broad overview of what we're going to be discussing today and the next several days. So make sure you pay attention and take notes.
What we're going to do in this video is talk a little bit more about federal powers versus state. And as mentioned in other videos, this is a very relevant topic because even today you'll have Supreme Court decisions being decided based on citing different parts of the Constitution or various amendments that seem to give one power or another more to the federal government or to the state government. Another important appreciation is the balance of power or the shifts of power between federal and state. It has historically changed over time, so it isn't this fixed thing. So in a previous video, we talked about the enumerated powers that the Constitution gives the federal government. In particular, we have talked about the Commerce Clause that allows the federal government to regulate commerce among the several states, which has turned out to be a much farther reaching power than maybe the drafters of the Constitution intended. And then the thing that really gives power to even the enumerated powers is the necessary and proper clause, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. And so this is what we talk about, this necessary and proper clause creates a lot of implied powers. So you can imagine that this isn't the necessary and proper clause is not something that made the anti-federalists very happy. They were worried about kind of power grabs by the federal government. And so you have the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments. And the Ninth and 10th Amendment in particular are anti-federalists' attempt to limit the federal government power. So the Ninth Amendment says, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And even more important, the 10th Amendment, and this is really speaking to federal versus state powers, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, so not delegated to the federal government, nor prohibited by it, the federal government, to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. And so you could view this as reserved powers for the states. It's an anti-federalist attempt to say, hey, the federal government can't just do whatever it wants. It's trying to put a little bit of a check on the necessary and proper clause. So if you fast forward to the period right after the Civil War, you have the 13th Amendment, which bans slavery. And then you have the 14th Amendment, which is trying to bring slaves into society, allow them to be citizens, not just them, but their descendants. And this is in direct contradiction of the 1857 Dred Scott decision that we'll talk about in other videos, where the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that slaves and their descendants are not considered American citizens, and so they don't have a right to petition the government. So the 14th Amendment says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law, and so this is actually putting constraints on states. And so as we'll see, even though this is in the context of the post-Civil War era, because it's putting constraints on states, this is one of the amendments that's often cited that puts more power in the hands of the federal government. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The 14th Amendment has been very relevant in some very current debates. This notion of that any state, no state can deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This is often known as the due process clause. And it's this idea that no state can really strip away some of the rights that might be articulated in, say, the Bill of Rights, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. This is often known as the Equal Protection Clause. This is what you could view as a protection against some form of discrimination. And so even in very current debates around things like abortion or same-sex marriage, much of the debate will center around the 14th Amendment.
Okay, that was the first video. I played the second video and the same. I just want you guys to take notes over the videos because we're gonna have an assignment after later on.
Enumerated powers versus implied powers for the federal government. Enumerated just means powers that have been made explicit, that are clear, that have been enumerated, that have been listed in some ways. While implied powers are ones that maybe aren't as clear. Maybe they haven't been explicitly listed, but they are assumed because of certain wording or just in order to do the enumerated powers. And this is a really important concept because in any federal system where you have multiple layers, you have the federal government, you have the state governments, and of course you also have the local governments. But this idea of what powers go to the federal government versus the state government is a super important one. And it's a matter of significant debate, and it has changed over time. So to just get our baseline understanding, let's sample some of the enumerated powers to the federal government inside of the United States Constitution. So this right over here is Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. I'm not going to read it in its entirety. We'll focus on some of these powers in more detail in other videos. But I will sample it and focus on some of the clauses that have been especially cited and have been especially relevant to the world that we live in. So just a sample, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excesses. So these are very clear enumerated powers. It's listing what the Congress has the power to do. The Congress can borrow money on the credit of the United States. Once again, a very clear enumerated power. To regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. Now, this clause right over here, and this is now referred to as the Commerce Clause, might not really stand out to you. It might not stand out to you relative to the right to conduct foreign affairs or something that seems very big and dramatic like that. But it turns out that the Commerce Clause is viewed as one of the significant clauses that gives the federal government significant rights. And it's considered to have really three enumerated rights embedded in it. You have the regulation of commerce with foreign nations, the regulation of commerce among the several states, and with the Indian tribes. And it's the middle one that is viewed as giving the federal government a lot of power. Because even though it might seem, okay, well, we're just talking about commerce between states, it's been used to justify things like federal drug laws. That even if a state argues, hey, we are just going to, say, legalize marijuana within our states, the federal government has cited that your legalization of marijuana is going to affect commerce between the states. And we'll go into more depth of that in future videos. But the Commerce Clause is a key enumerated right that's given in the Constitution that is viewed as giving the federal government fairly broad authority. But let's continue. To establish a uniform rule of naturalization. Who becomes an American? Uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcy. Keep going. I always encourage you to look at this in context in the actual Constitution. That is always interesting. The reason why I listed all of these out, even though I'm not going to read them, is that it's just interesting to see how many of these enumerated rights there are. But I'm going to focus on the last clause, because this one is, in a lot of ways, much bigger than all of the other ones. It says, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States, or in any department or officer thereof. Pause this video. Think about why this is a very, very, very big deal. Well, the previous 17 clauses were very explicit. They were enumerated powers about what the federal government has the power to do. But this one here is making a much broader statement. It's saying to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. The enumerated powers that were in the last 17 clauses. And so this is known as the necessary and proper clause, which you will hear a lot about. Necessary and proper. it provides for a lot of implied powers because it's essentially saying, look, there's things that we haven't listed in the enumerated powers in the previous 17 clauses, but the federal government has the right to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. And so even when I was talking about, say, federal drug laws, it's really the combination of the Commerce Clause and the necessary and proper clause that allows the federal government to make some of these broader arguments. It says, okay, we regulate commerce, and in order to regulate commerce, we need to regulate drugs because it is necessary and proper for regulating interstate commerce. So we're going to talk more and more about this, especially when we look at specific constitutional cases that will cite these clauses. It's really important to appreciate what enumerated powers are, what implied powers are, which the necessary and proper clause gives a lot of, and the anti-federalists really do not like this 18th clause. Understanding the ideas of enumerated and implied powers is going to be really helpful as we study the various disputes over state versus federal powers throughout American history, and how it is decided on by, say, the Supreme Court when they cite the Constitution, and in particular, cite some of the clauses that we just looked at.
Okay, so those three videos that we just watched were an introduction to what we're going to be doing today and the next few days, going over the powers that the government has. And today we're going to focus on three powers that were mentioned in the videos. So we're going to focus on the reserved powers, the delegated powers, and the concurrent powers. And it's important for you guys to know this because it helps to become more informed citizens. It helps you understand which powers they share, and it helps you understand these powers because they affect your daily life. So let's begin. So the first power we're going to discuss is the reserved powers. And these powers are not specifically given to any part of the government. And what it says on the U.S. Constitution is they're not given to the national government nor denied to the state. So these powers come from the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, just like the first video that we watched said. Some examples of reserved powers are speed limits and different, like the speed limits that a state set, marriage laws. Each state has different marriage laws. Like the state of Arkansas has you can get married at 18 years old without the consent of a parent. Divorce laws. Each state will have its own divorce laws. Each state has its own way of handling education. And each state has their own requirements for obtaining a driver's license. Okay, so the next powers are delegated powers. And these are powers that are given to the federal government, and like the first video said, they're found in Article 1, Section 8. These powers can also be known as expressed or enumerated powers. And examples of delegated powers would be the ability to declare war, so only the federal government can declare war. They could coin money or paper currency. They're the ones that set up. Another example would be they're the one that sets up the post office and makes its regulations and rules. They can make treaties with other countries, and they can also maintain an army. So these are only powers that are reserved for the federal government. So, and the third kind of power that is concurrent powers. So these are powers, unlike the other ones, that are shared by both the state and federal government. So, and examples would be taxes. So, every worker, everyone who works pays both state and income taxes. Courts, they all have their court system. They both have their court system. Maintaining roads, so the government and the state can share that. Highways, bridges, anything that's built to travel. Borrowing money is also another example. And then make and enforce laws to punish criminals. Okay, so now I'm gonna give you guys 5 minutes to complete the assignment that's over here. It's going to be in your Google Classroom. So I want you guys to go to the Google Classroom of our class. And I'm going to set the timer. Once the 5 minutes are up, we're going to go over the assignment. So make sure you submit the assignment before once you're done. Okay, guys, so that was the timer. So now I want you guys just to pull up the assignment and we're going to go over the questions. So, the first question: in the state of Arkansas, you must be at least 18 years old to get married without permission from a parent or guardian. That would be correct. A reserved power. Number 2: it is illegal to ship bombs through the mail. Correct. That is B. So a delegated power. So number 3: and you must live 60 days in the state of Arkansas before you're allowed to file for divorce. That is A. Good job. A reserved power. Number 4: a worker has to pay both federal and state income taxes. That would be anyone? C. Concurrent power. Good job. On December 11th, 1941, Congress declared war on Germany and Italy. Everyone? B. Yes, delegated power. So only the federal government can do that. Okay, so people who live in the state of Arkansas, number 6, have to pay a sales tax. Everyone? A. Reserve power. Good. The state of number 7. The state of Arkansas regulates elections that are held in the state. Anyone? Reserve powers. Good. Number 8. Congress has the power to coin money. Correct. Delegated powers is the answer. Number 9. The president has the power to make treaties with other countries. Anyone? B. Good job. That's a delegated power. And then number 10. A lawyer who wants to practice law in Arkansas must pass the Arkansas State Bar exam. And that is a reserved power. Good job. Okay, so that is it for today. If you guys have any questions, you guys could just contact me. So if you want to go over the assignment or anything we discussed today. Thank you for your time.